Have you been looking for how to use your skills to deliver business value? In this video, I'll be teaching you how to make use of Python and Power BI to deliver business value. This video is a series on market basket analysis with Python in Power BI.
So, what exactly is market basket analysis and what does it do? So, it is simply grouping items that are likely to be purchased together, and it helps us discover patterns in customer purchasing behavior. So, now I'm going to look at certain important terms in market basket analysis that would help us understand what we are doing. When we understand these basic concepts, when we see them eventually when we are coding and when we are plotting our visuals, we would understand better what they mean. Support. What is support? That's the first thing I'll be talking about. It is the frequency of occurrence of a set of items. So if I go to a store and I purchase a candle and a matchbox, the number of times that customers actually purchase candle and matchbox together is the support of that relationship. Then confidence is the likelihood of buying item B when item A is purchased. So now it is checking what is the likelihood that you are buying a matchbox after you have purchased a candle? And then lift is like the opposite, but there's a good statement, or there's a statement at the end that makes you understand it better. It compares it to random chance. So it wants to know if you are just buying the matchbox by coincidence, or you are actually buying the matchbox because you bought the candle. That's what lift helps you to understand. And then the first item you purchase, in this case and this example I have cited, it is candle, is my antecedent. The first item of purchase is known as antecedent, and the item purchased after the antecedent is known as consequent. Consequent is the item that is purchased in addition to the antecedent. So your consequence can actually be more than one item. And then you have leverage. Leverage measures the distance between the observed support and the expected support of items. And then you have antecedent support. That's the support of the antecedent item, and then the support of the consequent item known as consequent support. So these are the basic things that you need to understand when it comes to market basket analysis, because they are important foundational things in market basket analysis, and they are going to be present in the result that we'll be getting when we get to the hands-on session of this video. All right, so I'll move forward. Another thing that is important is your data set and data preparation. It is very crucial that you need to handle missing values, remove duplicates, and all that when it comes to market basket analysis. You need to handle and clean your data properly. So that is why it is important for you to do this. And one thing that we have as an advantage with PyCaret is that aside your data cleaning, PyCaret still goes ahead to do some data cleaning for you, but it is still important that you go ahead and clean the data for yourself. If this video is moving at a very fast speed, you can actually slow down or pause at different points in time and then go over the concepts again. And if you need more information, you can always check online for resources. So, you must have heard me mention PyCaret and wonder what it was, or you might know it already. Whichever case it may be, I just want to give a brief introduction to what PyCaret is. So, PyCaret is a Python library. A Python library is a group of functions, methods that have been put together to solve a particular problem for you. And it is a Python library that automates machine learning workflows, making our analysis more efficient. So, what this library does is that ordinarily you have to get a model, train that model, evaluate the model, and select the best model. Maybe if you've done more than one model, and then deploy that model and use it for whatever you want to do. In our own case, market basket analysis. But what this spike array does is that it does all of this for you. It is known as auto ML, auto from automate, ML for machine learning. So it is an auto ML library that does machine learning for you. It goes ahead to actually build that model, train the model, and then choose the best model. In fact, it trains on a series of models and then chooses the best and then deploys the best for you. So this is the workflow of what it looks like. So you have it pre-process and prepare the data. After you have done your data cleaning, of course, it will build and evaluate machine learning models for you, and then it's going to select the best model for the analysis. And finally, you're going to have the model deployed in Power BI for visualization. So what it's going to return to you is a data set. We are going to see this later in this video. All right, now let's get into the live demonstration of market basket analysis using Python and PyCaret within Power BI. So here are some prerequisites for actually doing this project. The first thing is you need to download and install Anaconda from Anaconda's website. You also need to download and install Power BI if you do not have it, and that's from Microsoft Power BI website. And you also need to download the data sets that we are going to be using for this analysis. The links to these three prerequisites are at the description, in the description of this video, so you can go through the description and click on these links to get whatever resource that you need. You can just pause this video, make sure you download the data set, you download Power BI if you don't have, and download Anaconda if you don't have it as well. So the first thing we are going to be doing is to install Anaconda. If you have not installed it after downloading, please go ahead and install it. Then you open Anaconda Navigator and create a virtual environment. Install the required Python packages. So I'm going to take you through all of these 4 steps. Stay with me. All right, so if you have installed Anaconda, you're going to go to your system, to the search, and type in Anaconda. You're going to see two types of you're going to see two icons. You're going to see one that's named Anaconda Navigator and one that is named Anaconda Prompt. For this first part, actually, you can use any of both. This is how Anaconda Navigator looks like when you open it up, and Anaconda Prompt looks like this command prompt that you work with. Personally, I prefer to work in the Anaconda prompt because I'm closer to the command line and I like to work with the command line. But there are a lot of things you can also do with the navigator as well. So just join me as we make use of the Anaconda navigator and also the prompts. I'll start with the navigator and just show you how you can simply create a Python um, virtual environment. And the reason we are creating a virtual environment is because we want to be able to install certain versions of Python and certain versions of PyCaret. So you might have Python working on your system already and you don't want a conflict. So what this does is that it creates an environment like a, let me say, like a small office within your system where all you need are the things that are present there only. So it's just like a virtual store that you only make the things you want to make use of for a particular task are present there only. So it doesn't have to affect the rest of your system. So in this virtual environment, all the tools and everything you need will be there, and it doesn't have to affect the rest of the application of your system. This is good practice when it comes to software development or even data science as a whole, because different projects might require different versions, different tools. You don't have to start reinstalling and uninstalling on your system. Just create separate environments, and an environment will be dedicated to just one project. So that's why we are creating a virtual environment, because we want to be able to install a certain version of Python that works for PyCaret 2.3.10, which is the version of PyCaret that we'll be making use of, because this version is the last version that had support for the algorithm that we are going to be making use of. That's the machine learning model that we're going to be making use of. It is called ARULES, ARULES, and the support for it stopped at 2.3.10. So that is why we're going to be making use of that particular version of PyCaret, because there are later versions of PyCaret with more tools, with more things that you can do with them, but they don't support association rule mining, which is the machine learning algorithm behind market basket analysis and some other um, machine learning tasks actually. Okay, that being said, so the first thing you might want to do is to create your virtual environment. So in your own navigator, you would see just the base routes. You are not likely to see all of this. These are virtual environments that I have created, and they all are present in my system. Like I said, I prefer to actually work with the prompts, but I'll just show you for the sake of knowledge how to create a virtual environment with the navigator. But after this, every other thing I'm going to do is going to be with the Anaconda prompt. So you go to this button at the lower left side of the screen. It says create. You click create. Yeah. So when you click on that button, you have this dialog box open, this interface, and then you can go in and type in the environment name you want to give it. So I can just call it test one, and I would select what package I want to use. So you can use R and you could use Python, but in this case we are using Python, and then you click on the drop down to actually select the Python version you want, and you can see the version here is for 3.7 is 3.7.16. I could go ahead and click on that, though I actually want to use 3.7.5 because that's the version I'm pretty sure that works with PyCaret 2.3.10. I think 3.7 should work as well. It should, but I've tested using only 3.7.5, so that's why I can't say with all certainty. So, and this is one of the reasons why I prefer to use I prefer to use the prompts to the navigator, because on the prompts I can actually specify the exact Python version I want to use. So finally, just click on this and then you click on create. And once you do that, you're going to have your environment listed here. But I'll go ahead and show you how it is done on the Anaconda prompt. So this is my Anaconda prompt, and if I want to actually create a new environment, I just need to type in a certain command. So the first thing is conda. Conda, this is like I call it the magic word for the Anaconda prompt, because it's like the command, the name that actually makes Anaconda work. So when you say conda, it's it makes Anaconda listen to you and actually execute a command, just like your Python command. When you want to execute a Python script, you say Python, then you mention the name of the script. It could be my script.py, and then Python goes ahead to execute that script. So it is the same thing here. So you say conda, and then you give your commands, and you can see we are in the base or the root environment, which is the default environment that comes with Anaconda. So the next thing we are going to do after typing in conda is to say create. So this tells it to create a new environment, and then we see dash dash name. So give it a name, and then we could call that name maybe test environment test one env. I'm using test one env because I already have test env before. And then you specify the Python version that you want to actually install. So I could just say Python equal to 3.7.5. 3.5. And this is the full command, and then I click enter, or I hit the enter button and wait for the command to be executed. As you can see, Python is trying to, Anaconda is trying to gather all the requirements for it to create that environment. So we're just going to go ahead and wait. So I'm going to pause this video and resume after it has done all of that. So it's likely you get this prompt that says proceed, and you see a Y or Y/N. It's basically asking you if you should proceed with installing these packages that are necessary for these virtual environments. So you should just type a Y and press enter. All right, so you can see that my Anaconda is done creating this environment for me. And you can see it has even given me the command that is necessary to activate that environment if I need to make use of it. So you can see conda activate test1 env to actually make use of it, or conda deactivate when I'm not necessarily using it. So what I'm going to do now is to just type in conda activate test1 env. So right here, I'll just type it in conda activate test1 env. And then you could see it's going to take just a few seconds or a minute, depending on the speed of your system or some of the dependencies. And as you can see now, it has changed from base. You can see test1 env. So this test1 env actually tells me that I am working in my test environment. And so now I can go ahead and install PyCaret, which is the necessary tool for our machine learning project. So I just go in there and type pip install PyCaret. I'm sure you all know what pip is. Pip is the package installer for Python libraries. So it helps you install whatever it is you need to install for a Python project. So I just go and type pip install PyCaret, and I'll make sure that the version is 2.3.10 or 2.3.5, whichever one. Both actually work. As you can see, my PyCaret is installing and also installing the necessary dependencies. If you look closely, you can see things like word cloud, ML flow, scikit-learn, job live, and a lot of other things that are necessary for actually using PyCaret. So I'm going to pause the video once again and come back as soon as it is done installing. All right, so if you've done everything correctly, you should have something like this on the screen that says that shows you the test environment and a place where you can continue typing, showing that it has installed all of your dependencies, everything PyCaret needs and PyCaret itself. So if you have a problem, probably it says something about scikit-learn not installing and all of that, you can just go ahead and install PyCaret 2.3.5 instead of 2.3.10. Both should still work the way they ought to. And with this, we are done with making use of Anaconda. That was all we needed it for actually. And we are going to just close our Anaconda prompt and the navigator itself. We don't need them anymore. All that we need to do now is to get the data and also input it or insert it or import it into Power BI, whichever one works for you. So you start your Power BI just like I have, and you see the screen that I have on I have on currently, you'd see something like this, and it's going to take a short time, or depending on your system, it might take a longer time. And now we have Power BI up on the screen. You can decide to get in your data through various means. So one thing I always say is that the beauty of Power BI is that there are more than there's always more than a way to actually bring in your data. In fact, to do certain things, there's always more than one way to do a thing in Power BI. So that's why it seems like you have a lot of options on the screen, but most times you could have more than five five ways of doing just a single thing. So our data is an Excel workbook, and to actually bring it in, there are a number of ways which I would show you. You can just go directly and click on Excel workbook, and this is one of the easiest way. Or you could just come here and click import data from Excel. That's two ways to do the same thing. You can go to data, the data pane right here, and click get data. And once you click that, it would show you the options that are available for you to get data from, which is still the same thing as coming here to click get data. So when you click this place, or if you click this place, you will have this option, and then you could click Excel workbook. Or if you're working with Microsoft Fabric, you're working with a database, Power Platform, other services, you can always find all of them here. In fact, I'll show you one more way to still bring in your data. You can actually come in to file. When you click on file, it's going to give you a list of options as well. And you can see get data. It's still the same thing. So whichever way works for you, you could make use of them as you see fit. So I'm just going to click import data from Excel because I know this particular data is Excel, but if it was something else, I'm going to make use of another connector from any of the options available to me. So navigate to the location where you have the data that you downloaded from Cargo. In my case, it's in download in a particular folder where I extracted it to, and the name of the file is called online retail. So I'll click on it, and then I'll click open. So after clicking open, you're going to see connecting, and then Power BI is going to try to make a connection to your data source. And the beautiful thing about Power BI is that whenever you connect once, you can always easily make use of it anytime you see fit. So what does that mean for me? It means once I have done market basket analysis on a data set, I don't necessarily need to go back and run it again because I have added new data points to that data set or to that Excel workbook. All I need to do is to hit the refresh button right here on the screen beside transform data, and automatically it's going to apply all that has been done to the data that has just been added, and my results or whichever visuals I have on my screen are also going to update. Okay, so now my data has been imported, and you can see I can just check the box beside it, and once I check that box, it gives me the ability to click on load and transform data. Actually, I'm still going to transform the data, but there's a setting I need to do. Remember, we installed Python and PyCaret. We need to actually link those to our Power BI. So before I do that, I would before I transform my data, I'm just going to load it first because I can still transform my data after loading. Ordinarily, if you set your Power BI to link to your Python in your virtual environment, then you don't need to load directly, just go to transform data. But because I need to do that setting, I'm going to just load first, do the setting, then go back and transform the data. So I've clicked on load and I'll wait for the data to be loaded into Power BI. So as you can see, my data has loaded and you can see that I have 541,000 rows. So on your system, it might take long to actually load this data. If it's taking a while, you just have to be patient. And if your system is fast, it might not take so much time. So just to put that out there, that in case it takes time, it's absolutely normal because the data is a bit large for some systems, so they might not be able to handle it so fast. My system being one of them. All right, so the next thing I'm going to do now, since my data is here, you can see it is here online retail. I want to actually set up my Python environment and PyCaret in Power BI. So I'm going to click on File, and then when I click on File, I'm going to make the settings. Go to Options and Settings, the second to the last option. I'll click on it, and then you have Data Source Settings and Options. So I'm going to go to Options. After I click Options, the following data is the following window is going to open up, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on Python scripting. So if you look at mine, currently I have already set it up, but for yours it's likely that you're going to have something like probably maybe this your default system Python might be there, or Anaconda. So you just click on other, and then you click on browse. So when you click on browse, you go to the folder where you have Anaconda. When you open Anaconda, you open a folder called env, then select the particular name, which remember you created a virtual environment. So you would see it if the name of your environment was test1 env. You can easily just go to browse, go straight to where you can find your Anaconda, and then this is my Anaconda. I open the Anaconda. This is envs. Open envs. You can see test one env. So if it was test one env I want to use, I'll just click on test one env and okay. But this mark env actually has all of those um my Python and my PyCaret installed, so I'm just going to stick with it. So you just make sure that you point to the exact location of your virtual environment. And when you're done with that, just leave every other thing as is. That's this option, leave it as is, and then click OK. And with that, we are done with our settings. So we are pointing Power BI to that Python installation or to that virtual environment so that it can work with all the installations present in that virtual environment. So the next thing we are going to do now is to actually transform our data, because that is where we do our data cleaning. We need to clean our data, and that is also where we are going to train our machine learning model and actually execute the machine learning model, if as a matter of fact. So let's click on transform data, and that is going to open a Power Query editor for us. So I have my Power Query editor open, and now I can see all of my data that I actually want to work with. So I have invoice number, stock code, description, quantity, invoice date, unit price, customer ID, and country. These are the things that I want to actually work with. So I'm going to start by cleaning the data. So if you're familiar with Power BI, you would know that this ABC1 to 3 and ABC beside each of the column names are actually the data types of each column. So I'm going to change each data type to the corresponding data type that I want. Invoice number, I'm going to change it to text because it is going to be a string because there is no need for any mathematical operation on invoice number. There's no time where I'm going to add up all the invoice numbers or find the average or find the sum or find the median. It is just a unique identifier. So I don't need it to be in number format. I just need it to be text. Same thing for stock code. I'm going to change it to text as well. The same thing for customer ID. I need it as text and not numbers because I don't need to add customer ID at any point in time. It's also a unique identifier. And based on this, so when I change it, I'm going to click replace current. Don't want it to add a new step, just replace current. So what it means is you replace the current step. Okay, so and the next thing I want to do is I can decide I want to leave the time format. If you're interested in knowing what time the customer purchased that product, probably you want to use that to do some analysis on the time of the day. You're fine to leave it, but since this video is not going to cover all of that, I just want to have my dates only. I don't want to, I have no business with the time. I just want to have the dates. So I'm going to change it from date time to dates. And I'm going to click replace current. So as you can see currently, my data by my own standards is a bit better. And now I still have some things to do actually. If you look at description and customer ID, you'll see that less than 1% of the data is actually empty. So it means there are some null rows there. So I want to clean this and I want to actually make sure that I don't have null. So one thing I would do is to actually replace those empty values with something. So for my description, for example, since it is a product that is missing, I'll just go ahead and click. You can see this is the null. I click the drop down button. It shows me that there is null there. So fine. I'm going to right click. Like I said, in Power BI, there's more than one way to do something at many times. There's always more than one way. So I can decide to right click, and then when I right click, I click on replace values, or I can just click on the column and right up here under the transform ribbon, I can see replace values. Whichever one you decide to do, they both do the same thing. So I'm going to click on replace values. So you can see this pops up, and what it wants to know is which value is it looking for, and I'm going to say null because that's the empty value. And what should it replace it with? So I'm going to say unknown products, unknown products, and I'm going to say okay. So my data is going to actually change again because now it has changed from um, what it used to be. So you could see that all of the column profiling are actually reloading. So I'm going to do the same thing for customer ID as well. So I come to customer ID, I click on replace values. So it's asking me for the value to find, and the value it's looking for is null, and I'm going to replace it with unknown, or just unknown or unknown customer. One of both of them. You can decide to use anyone. So it's looking for null, and then we're replacing null with unknown customer. You can see the reason why we actually even change customer ID to text. If it was still in numbers, then we would not be able to do this. Probably would have to enter a default value like 000. but it is better to just have it as text since we will not be performing any arithmetic or mathematical operations on customer ID at any point in time. And so right now, what we need to do is to actually click on transform data or the transform column at the very top of the screen because this is the home tab. Everything we've been doing has been with the home tab. So now we want to click on the transform tab and I can click it. And when you do that, at the very right, the last option there is run Python scripts. So this is what we are going to do to be able to run the machine learning model. Yeah. So this is what is going to run PyCaret from us, for us rather. So let's click on run Python scripts. So as you can see, we have the option to enter the Python scripts, which will now transform and shape our data. Now, this is the time where we are actually going to put PyCaret to work. So the first thing we are going to do is to actually write a line of code that imports the machine learning library that we want to make use of. So we're going to say from PyCaret import star from PyCaret.arrows. Remember I talked about association rule mining, and that is arrows. It is the algorithm behind market basket analysis and a couple of other machine learning techniques as well. So I'm going to say from arrows, that's PyCaret.arrows import star. And what that essentially means is that it should import all of the modules present in arrows. So and once I am done with that, I'm going to go to the next line. The next line, I'm going to specify the data that I want to make use of. So I'm going to say data equal to get rules, which is get underscore rules. So not camel case, but get underscore rules. Okay, so once we're done with that, I'll open a bracket and close it as well so that I can put in the values that are needed. So inside, I'm going to say data is equal to data set. And the reason for this is if you look at the first line before I started typing my code, it says that data set holds the input data for this script. So we need to now say that the input data is actually data set so that it can get that particular data. Then we're going to specify two columns. The transaction ID, which is trying to understand, okay, which transaction ID, what is the transaction ID you want me to use? And we're going to actually make sure that it uses the customer ID as the transaction ID. So that is what it wants to identify each unique transaction. So to identify each unique transaction, we're making use of the customer ID. So I'll just go ahead and put customer ID the way it is written in our script. I'm going to put it there. The way it is in our data set column rather. I'm going to put it in our script as well. Customer ID. And I also need to specify which what is the description of the product or what is the item ID. How do we identify each of the items that we are talking about? So there are two ways to do this. You can actually decide to use, if there's a product ID, you can go ahead to use the product ID. But personally, I prefer to use the product description so that it can actually be um, relevant, or you can see it. You don't have to go trace each product's ID to the product itself again. So, but you can decide to do whichever one it is that works for you. So I'm going to type in item ID, item underscore ID. PyCaret understands that it is market basket analysis, so it knows that item ID should be for the product. So I'm just going to type in description there. Description. And with this, I we are good to go. Just these two lines is going to do all that we need to do. So I'm just going to click on OK, and everything is going to run. And this might take a while because we're actually running a machine learning algorithm. So not as long as it will take if you are doing it by yourself, but it's just going to take a short while. So a couple of minutes, we should be done and we should be able to view our results. So you might see an option like this that said information is required about data privacy. This is a new feature in Power BI that actually tries to protect your data privacy. And but because this data is an open source data set, there's nothing particular about privacy that I'm going to actually do. So I'm just going to first of all click on continue. Then after clicking on continue, this pops up and I'm going to say ignore privacy level checks for this file, right? So ignore privacy. But if if it's sensitive data, then you have to actually set the privacy levels. But since this is just an open source data set from Kaggle, I'm just going to ignore privacy level checks for this file and click on save. Because if you don't do that, your Python is not going to run. So Power BI is asking you if you want to actually permit Python or a script from outside Power BI to work on a data inside of Power BI. So that is the reason why this is there. So if you look up, you would see that some dots are moving across the screen. Yeah, so this to tell you that the machine learning algorithm is working and running. So we just want going to wait for it to be done. All right, so after a while, you're going to see something on your screen like this with name, value, data table, data set table. It just shows that your original data is in one table, and the data set which has been worked on by Python or PyCaret rather is in another table, which is data set table. So we just need to expand this so that we can be able to see what is in that new table that has been created for us. To do that, you come on this icon here and then you click on it. So it's going to say expand. You can decide to check this box if you want to use original column name as prefix, or if you just want to leave it as the new name. So personally, I don't need this again. So I'll just click OK. But you can leave it in case you want to see what happened or what went wrong there, or what went right rather. If you just want to see what happened there, just click on the use original column name. So it's going to tell you from which column it got the data that you are currently seeing. All right, so I have all of the columns. You can see based on what we had discussed before, you have your antecedents, consequence, support, lifts, and all of that in the dataset conviction. So I don't need the original columns from the dataset any longer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to disable them and just leave the ones that are from the machine learning model, which is my antecedents, consequence, antecedent support, consequence support, support, confidence, lift, leverage, conviction. All of those are more important to me than the original columns from the data set. So once I'm done, I click on OK. And now we have our data from the Python script. And you can see there's still a little bit of cleaning that needs to be done before we actually go ahead and visualize. We need to drop some columns, which is like the name column. Then for antecedents, we might need to do a formatting to remove the word frozen set because it created a set of items, right? And then we also need to format our numbers as decimal. Yeah, those are the things that we need to do in order to actually go ahead with our visualization. But now the machine learning is model is done. It has grouped our products into antecedents and consequence. So all that is left now is to do the visualization that will bring out valuable insights from this data. So the next part we'll be doing now is to actually clean up this data and then do some visualization.